Dick Van Dyke is still singing with his band, the Fantastics, at the age of 98, and he still manages to make it appear effortless. Fans have been closely monitoring Dick Van Dyke's health as he gets closer to turning 100. The adored musician has been dealing with major health issues in recent months, according to a touching statement from his family, as they accept the fact that the renowned actor, singer, and dancer is in a precarious condition. The news has deeply alarmed his peers and admirers. Come along as we explore the specifics of this discovery. The longevity curse. In Malibu, the day was meant to be joyful. Fans and kids were promised fun and excitement at an event featuring the well-known actor, Dick Van Dyke. A lot of people were anticipating his arrival at the Vandycamp event, but word soon got around that he wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be able to go. He is almost 100 years old, and he has days when he feels overwhelmed. Arlene Silver, his wife, spoke for him. She didn't try to make things seem better than they actually were. She was straightforward. He was just having a bad day, she stated quietly. It was a genuine fight, yet neither a major emergency nor a dramatic circumstance existed. When someone who has devoted their life to serving others begins to feel the effects of time, this is what happens. The fans immediately showed their love and support. They didn't disregard him or criticize him. Rather, they were encouraging and compassionate. Since they were young, many of them had admired Van Dyke for his roles in films and television shows. He was more than just a well-known figure to them. Like a friend, he was. When they found out that he was having a hard time, they became sympathetic and depressed. His family was silently watching over him and protecting him at home. His public appearances have always been viewed with caution by them. They are aware of his widespread appeal and the precarious state of his health. The remainder of the family, including Arlene, is open and caring. They express admiration as well as sadness in their comments. Dick Van Dyke had lived a long and good life. Instead of worrying about the future, they urge others to celebrate this. There is a certain calmness and solitude that comes from careful thought rather than terror. Even the tiniest moments gain significance as one ages. Dick no longer tries to attract attention because his reputation speaks for itself. Whether it be through a grin, a conversation, or a quiet evening, he now looks for peace, relaxation, and time spent with the people who love him the most. The emotional suffering that comes with growing older makes it challenging. Witnessing the gradual disappearance of the people who were significant to Van Dyke is one of the most difficult things for him. Most of them, including his instructors, friends, and co-stars, have passed away. They are now merely memories in his heart, yet their names were once in his phone book. He was silently affected by Edna's passing. Carl Reiner came next, then Norman Lear. It was like losing a piece of his life every time one of them died. They were more than just famous people. They were a part of his past, his happiness, and his conversations. Due to their shared experiences in the entertainment industry, aging, and life in general, they were the ones who knew him the best. He now looks back on those recollections with a soft look in his eyes that conveys an awareness that time is passing. According to Arlene, this emotion is one of calm melancholy at being one of the few people left, not rage or resentment. The hardship of living so long is referred to as a curse by her and Dick. They feel the weight of all the years they have lived, but they do not want for less time. As people remember individuals who are no longer with them, birthdays are celebrated with both happiness and sadness. More losses and farewells to loved ones, who formerly provided joy and direction, occur every year. Dick Van Dyke remains upbeat in spite of everything. He still hums tiny songs to himself, sings, and smiles. He makes jokes with others around him, and refuses to let sadness ruin his joy. He continues to believe that he has had a nice life, as he has stated on numerous occasions. He enjoys the small things in life, such as going on a morning walk, enjoying soothing music, and spending quality time with his partner Arlene. He still has awe-inspiring views of the world and finds beauty in ordinary things. He may be growing older and moving more slowly, but his heart is still warm and alive. His family observes the difficulties he has every day simply getting out of bed. They observe his newfound caution, but they also hear his comforting voice and see the familiar twinkle in his eyes. They know he's still Dick Van Dyke, even though he's a little softer and slower. Since he is aware of how much people care about him, he did not make the decision to cancel his recent appearance lightly. He put his health first, though. Speaking in front of a large group of people can occasionally wear him out. He chose to rest rather than push himself to complete it. His supporters were sympathetic and accepting of his decision. Let's now examine Van Dyke's health issues and the ways in which they have impacted his well-being. Van Dyke's addiction that almost destroyed him. Many people were unaware of Dick Van Dyke's covert battle with alcoholism. Despite his endearing laugh and friendly smile, his life was nearly devastated by a severe addiction that he was covertly fighting, despite his spectacular performances and impeccable dancing skills. Van Dyke was a well-known television personality in the 1960s and 1970s, especially with The Dick Van Dyke Show. In spite of his achievements, he became a heavy drinker. High expectations, loneliness, and stress were all part of fame. At first, drinking was Van Dyke's way of coping and escaping, but ultimately, it turned into a bad habit. His closest friends and family began to suffer as his addiction worsened. His health began to decline, and his marriage was severely strained. He noticed that his magnetism on stage was waning on some days, when he was unable to perform as he should. Van Dyke felt as like he was emotionally collapsing, even though his followers couldn't see his pain. He bravely decided to get help by spending 3 weeks in a hospital in 1972. Since few well-known individuals at the time discussed addiction candidly, it was challenging for him to acknowledge his issue. Van Dyke made the decision to confront reality and seek healing for his loved ones, the future, and himself. Following his medical treatment, Van Dyke remained committed to his sobriety. He worked very hard to be substance-free and changed his everyday routine. Over time, he openly discussed his experiences with addiction to help others who were facing comparable problems, rather than to gain notoriety. His courage motivated his followers and made talking about addiction more commonplace and stigma-free. Despite his effective recovery from alcoholism, Van Dyke's health problems persisted. He smoked heavily for the majority of his adult life and struggled to stop. He used Nicorette gum for almost 10 years to help fight his urges. He began having a worrying, hammering feeling in his head every time he lay down in 2013. But physicians couldn't figure out what was causing it. He started to think that his titanium dental implants might be the cause of his suffering, after going through a lot of testing and canceling events. Still, he stayed strong and determined to keep going. Even successful people can have hardships, as evidenced by Van Dyke's battle with addiction and disease. His honesty and perseverance in overcoming those obstacles are what distinguish his narrative. Addiction was not going to rule his life. Rather, he turned it into a teaching moment, demonstrating to us that it's never too late to ask for assistance, make adjustments, and start over. But the public scrutiny of Van Dyke's ties has resulted in multiple scandals. The unsung Dick Van Dyke story. Dick Van Dyke has always been surrounded by music, laughing, and an infectious pleasure that makes whatever space he walks into seem more cheerful. Beyond his hilarious performances and amazing dancing abilities, though there is a deeper personal and sincere story that shows a man who cherishes love, family, and fortitude. Van Dyke's relationship experiences, from his early marriage to his later romantic pursuits, are marked by steadfast loyalty, cordial alliances, and unbreakable familial ties. Before becoming well known, in 1948 Van Dyke married Margie Willett. When they first started dating, they were both young and dreamed of leading a peaceful, typical life together. As Dick pursued his career in theater and television, they grew closer as a family and welcomed 4 children over the years. The love between them was formed at a time of self-discovery for Van Dyke, but they persisted and made sure that their family remained intact through the ups and downs. Even though the demands of notoriety finally took a toll on their marriage, and despite the fact that their marriage did not endure, he was left with his cherished children as a priceless possession. One of their kids, Barry Van Dyke, did more than simply carry on his father's name. In addition to pursuing a career and acting like his father, he shared a television screen with him. With Barry playing his father's on-screen son, the Van Dyke family found the series Diagnosis to be an incredibly memorable experience. Because it was based on their actual relationship, the sincere connection between them was clear. The familial bond on set was further cemented when Van Dyke's grandsons eventually got the chance to join the group in tiny parts. It was more than just a job at the event. Every scene featured a blend of familial relationships, affection, and loyalty. This sincere connection gave the film a special warmth that connected with viewers and helped them sense how real the connections were. Actors were doing more than merely delivering lines to the audience. They were seeing people from different generations together in their love of storytelling and performance. Van Dyke found comfort in a long-lasting friendship with Michelle Triola following the dissolution of his first marriage. During his best years, Triola was an important part of his life. Even though they chose not to be married, they had a lasting friendship that endured. Overcoming hardships and peaceful times together, Van Dyke found strength in this relationship, which gave him emotional equilibrium in the face of life's turbulent ups and downs. The most surprising development in Van Dyke's love life occurred long later, in 2006, when he met Arlene Silver. Van Dyke was 46 years older than Arlene, a makeup artist working backstage at an event. After years of emotional numbness, Van Dyke found that Arlene's calm manner and contagious enthusiasm spoke to him. Despite their age gap, they began as friends and eventually developed a relationship based on deep conversations, laughing, and an increasing sense of trust. Van Dyke and Arlene were married in 2012. The 86-year-old Van Dyke and the 40-year-old Arlene are 46 years apart in age. But the pair was unfazed by the public discussion of their age difference, because they were concentrating on their strong relationship. Throughout their marriage, Arlene served as Van Dyke's primary caregiver and vital creative partner, in addition to her many other responsibilities. She supported him through thick and thin, traveling with him, arranging his public appearances, and planning the vibrant and musical Vandy Camp, which gave Van Dyke inspiration and joy. Van Dyke never shied away from expressing his true thoughts, even as detractors expressed concern about the considerable age difference between them, and implied that Arlene might be courting him for his reputation or fortune. Van Dyke always praised Arlene's serene and loving manner, highlighting the strength of their bond. Anyone watching their interactions could feel their love, not just see it. Over time, even the general public started to see how genuine their bond was. A story that no headline could contest was conveyed by candid photos of the pair dancing, laughing, and singing together. Despite the public's perception of Van Dyke's success and renown, his life has been impacted by a number of unseen struggles. The struggles Dick Van Dyke keeps hidden. People have always been delighted by Dick Van Dyke. His magnetism has always been evident in both his TV shows and Mary Poppins performances. Even though his life appeared to be cheerful, he occasionally had hidden struggles with doubt and rivalry. Despite his widespread popularity, Van Dyke nevertheless faced difficulties, particularly when it came to working with colleagues and with the demands of celebrity. Not everything was flawless when filming The Dick Van Dyke Show started. Van Dyke initially had some reservations about Mary Tyler Moore, who was selected to play his wife on television. Van Dyke questioned whether she was prepared for such a significant role because she was young and lacked acting experience. Mary, however, was under a great deal of pressure. Despite her admiration for Van Dyke, she was uneasy on set with him. She feared making a mistake. Their initial days on the show were characterized by a sense of unease rather than disputes. There was tension since they were both attempting to figure out where they fit in. But as time went on, things began to get better. With every episode, the two actors' relationship deepened, and they started to trust one another. Their bond eventually developed into one of the most recognizable collaborations in television history, marked by sincere compassion and affection. Audiences adored the classic movie Mary Poppins, which Van Dyke and Julie Andrews starred in years later. Although they had a lot of chemistry on television, their off-screen interactions were less glamorous. Media fans began spreading the notion that they were the ideal pair, which sparked speculation about potential relationships and additional ventures together. Andrews was revered by Van Dyke, but he didn't want to be mired in someone else's story. They were under pressure to project an unrealistic public image, but there was no actual dispute between them. They were not a fairy tale couple, they were professionals. And the expectations placed on them made things unpleasant, because everything they did was watched closely and twisted into rumors. Van Dyke had to deal with conflict from his family, particularly his younger brother, actor Jerry Van Dyke, rather than from outsiders or recording companies. Despite his hard work and admirers, Jerry was always in the background, as his more well-known brother Dick. Jerry had the chance to play the lead, such as on Gilligan's Island, but he declined in order to avoid being compared to Dick. When both brothers rejected the identical part, it was clear that their instincts were different. In the eyes of the world, Jerry was frequently viewed as the inferior Van Dyke, notwithstanding their differences. Although it wasn't overt or spectacular, the brothers' animosity persisted. In interviews, Jerry freely acknowledged that living in Dick's shadow was difficult. Knowing that his success inadvertently eclipsed his brother, whom he loved, must have been tough for Dick as well. Van Dyke began to experience frustration in a different way as he grew older. It was due to the entertainment industry itself, not his coworkers or detractors. He noticed a shift between the 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s. He found it more difficult to land acting assignments. Hollywood was more interested in younger performers, not because he lacked talent. The ringing of the phone subsided. Casting directors and producers stopped contacting him. He was quite irritated by this. He had dedicated his entire life to honing his acting abilities. He still had plenty of enthusiasm, vigor, and happiness to give, but he was unable to take advantage of fresh prospects because of his age. He talked about it honestly, without anger. Many elderly actors feel invisible because of the entertainment industry's fixation on youth. Van Dyke refused to accept that he would continue to perform, even if it meant taking on smaller parts or pursuing side ventures. Despite his unwavering zeal, he still encountered difficulties. The untrue rumors that kept Dick Van Dyke from being alone. Dick Van Dyke has been a well-liked Hollywood icon for more than 70 years. He has made a lot of people happy with his cheerful voice, upbeat manner, and brilliant grin. However, unfavorable rumors can target even well-known celebrities like him. Over the years, Dick Van Dyke has had to contend with persistent false rumors. Even though they are false, these rumors, which include false death reports, erroneous statements, and deceptive headlines, have hurt people. Death hoaxes have been a distressing problem for Van Dyke on numerous occasions. False allegations of his death have circulated on social media on several occasions. Usually, these false tales say he passed away from an unexpected heart attack or an automobile accident. As admirers all throughout the world rush to confirm the news, panic swiftly breaks out. People who believe they have lost their favorite celebrity grieve, pray, and even light candles. But in a matter of minutes or hours, it is discovered that everything was a lie. Van Dyke has not passed away. Even so, he and his fans have already been impacted emotionally. Not simply random people are impacted by these false stories. Imagine being a member of his family and seeing the phrase "dead" at 99 trending online, next to your loved one's name. Stress like that is hard to forget. It's still not acceptable. Notwithstanding Van Dyke's jokes about these false alarms, it acts as a reminder that the internet doesn't always consider the feelings of actual people before disseminating false information. Van Dyke is seen by many as more than just an actor. He is a symbol of fun moments, joyful recollections, and vintage amusement. As a result, once the rumor spreads, it seems like everyone is holding their breath in terror. But the disinformation isn't limited to circulating untrue reports about his passing. Additionally, phony statements and viewpoints that are ascribed to him, but were never said by him, are commonly shared. Posts claiming that Van Dyke made divisive or strong political views frequently surface on social media sites including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. While some of these posts are completely fictional, others might be meant as parody. Many people continue to believe and propagate this false information, in spite of the fact that it is untrue. Van Dyke's moral convictions are well recognized. He has previously publicly supported politicians like Bernie Sanders. He is cautious in his actions, nevertheless. He doesn't make ludicrous remarks or launch personal assaults to get attention. False information ascribed to him not only confuses the audience, but also misrepresents his actual personality. These lies present a distorted picture of him, which may lead to unjustified ire or unmerited awe. It doesn't accurately represent who he is in either situation. What motivates people to act in this way? It's usually done to get attention. More hits and shares are typically generated by a sensational post that includes the name of a well-known individual. Sometimes it's only meant to be clever or funny. What may begin as a jest, though, can turn into something harmful over time. False narratives have the potential to become deeply embedded in people's minds when they are repeated. It is quite difficult to dissuade people from believing a lie after they have already done so. Van Dyke's long career, generosity, and talent are overshadowed by these rumors, which take away from his real successes. The internet frequently obsesses over untrue statements ascribed to him rather than honoring his decades of dedication. Van Dyke has lived to a ripe old age. Although he has been in a number of near-fatal situations, Dick Van Dyke's near-fatal experience. Even though Dick Van Dyke is known for his upbeat attitude, he has been in hazardous and unpleasant situations. The actor has survived a number of near misses with his strength, charm, and sense of humor unharmed. These occurrences show his courage and resiliency in both his personal and on-screen lives. Something spooky happened on a nice, bright day. In August 2013, on a congested road in Los Angeles, Van Dyke was operating his Jaguar. As usual, there were plenty of cars flying by on the road. Suddenly, smoke began to emerge from his vehicle. And then there were flames. Panic and turmoil ensued when his luxury automobile caught fire. There was something amazing. The smoke was observed by a kind stranger who stopped to help. He hurried over to the blazing car, opened the door, and immediately saved Van Dyke. The entire car was engulfed in flames a short while later. Only a charred shell remained of the car after it was totally destroyed by the fire. Fortunately, Van Dyke came out of the experience unscathed. At the time, he was 87 years old. After such a near miss, many would have been terrified. But Van Dyke, ever the upbeat person he is, continued to smile. He maintained his composure in spite of the trauma caused by the viral video of the fire. But there were questions about whether he should still be driving alone at his age. 10 years later, Van Dyke was involved in another accident that made headlines. Van Dyke was traveling in Malibu in March 2023 when the roads were slick and it was raining. He lost control of his Lexus while driving in the rain and struck a gate. He wasn't hurt this time either. He might have had a concussion, and his nose was bloody. The people was concerned even though it wasn't a serious injury. When the police showed up, they checked to make sure he wasn't under the influence of alcohol or drugs. His age, however, was a greater worry. People began to wonder if he should still be driving at the age of 97. The vehicle collision brought up a challenging problem. When should senior citizens give up driving? For someone like Van Dyke, who has always been busy and self-reliant, this is particularly difficult. On social media, followers expressed their support, but many pleaded with him to stop driving for his own safety. Accidents have happened to Van Dyke before. Since the start of his profession, he has been having accidents. While recording the Dick Van Dyke Show in the 1960s, he experienced a particularly traumatic event. He was well known at the time for his comical and physical humor. To get people to laugh, he would perform tricks on stage like bouncing, flipping, tumbling, and collapsing. As a result, he became renowned, and the show became highly successful. Something went wrong in one section of the performance. He fell hard and lost some of his teeth while attempting a humorous trick. Despite the excruciating discomfort, he persisted. However, what revelation did Van Dyke make, and how did his admirers respond to it? The devastating revelation from Van Dyke. Few people are able to portray aging positively, but Dick Van Dyke, who is 99 years old, does. Throughout his more than 70 years in show business, he has consistently made people happy. He has been peacefully and gratefully preparing for the end of his life lately. His appearance in Coldplay's All My Love music video in late 2024 startled fans. He did more than just perform, he sent a message with his gentle grin and composed demeanor. He has no fear. While some people find death difficult to accept or grow resentful of aging, Van Dyke has discovered serenity. He is aware that he could die any day. Nevertheless, he greets every day with fun and dignity. For his fans, his candor has been both devastating and inspiring. Although he admits that there are things he wishes he had done differently, he has always been a highly active guy. He openly expressed his remorse at the age of 98 for not taking better care of himself. This was a mature, introspective reflection rather than a complaint. He now works out on a regular basis and keeps a positive outlook thanks to his wife Arlene Silver. Together, they have built a happy life that is full of dancing, laughter, and daily inspiration. Van Dyke is active and walks beautifully despite his advanced age. When wildfires threatened his Malibu home in recent years, it was one of the scariest experiences. He needed to leave. He crawled exhausted and alone to his car, where he might have been in grave danger, but for his helpful neighbors who helped him get to safety. Even for someone as vivacious as Van Dyke, this vacation served as a reminder of how fleeting life can be. Fans were genuinely shocked by a story from his background. He strayed far from shore one day while dozing off on a surfboard. Fins circled about him, and he felt frightened. He was relieved to be led back to safety by a bunch of porpoises rather than sharks. Like him, this was a unique and enchanted story. Van Dyke discussed his lengthy career and his 100th birthday in May 2025. He said that outliving nearly all of his pals is the hardest thing about becoming older. Even while this makes him unhappy, he chooses not to let it depress him. Even now, he still likes to perform and socialize. Even though he calls himself a ham, he still enjoys being the center of attention. He still has a great passion for performing. He continues to break records, despite being nearly 99 years old. He recently became the oldest person to win a Daytime Emmy, demonstrating that, unlike physical bodies, skill and enthusiasm do not wane with age. He responds that he is still open to working when asked about his future plans. He doesn't plan to retire anytime soon. For him, performing is more than just a profession. It is necessary for his health. He has received a lot of love from his admirers. Social media users are expressing how much they value him. Many have been profoundly impacted by his reflections on aging, his fortitude amid trying circumstances, and his inner serenity. How do you feel about the rumors circulating around Dick Van Dyke? Will he live to be 100 years old? Leave a comment below with your opinions. For more fascinating tales about your favorite celebrities, don't forget to hit the notification button, like, and subscribe. He has received a lot of love from his admirers. Social media users are expressing how much they value him. Many have been profoundly impacted by his reflections on aging, his fortitude amid trying circumstances, and his inner serenity. How do you feel about the rumors circulating around Dick Van Dyke? Will he live to be 100 years old? Leave a comment below with your opinions. For more fascinating tales about your favorite celebrities, don't forget to hit the notification button, like, and subscribe.